Australian climber Maria Stridham also showed signs of altitude sickness before she died.
On May 20th, 2016, Dr. Maria Stridham and her husband Robert Gropel were 15 minutes away from their dream of reaching the summit of Mount Everest. They had passed the trials of the climb and were on the point of achieving their goal. But suddenly, something completely unexpected happened. The 34-year-old Maria was a lecturer in finance at Monash University in Melbourne, Australia. She had a great passion for mountain climbing and veganism. She was born in South Africa and moved to Australia with her family when she was 11 years old. At university, she met her husband, Robert Gropel. Robert was a veterinarian at Ivanhoe East Veterinary Hospital in northeastern Melbourne. They were both vegan campaigners, passionate mountaineers, and together shared a love of adventure and travel. Maria's dream was to prove that vegans can do anything. It seems that people have this warped idea of vegans being malnourished and weak. By climbing the 7 summits, we want to prove that vegans can do anything and more, she said. In recent years, they had already climbed 4 of the highest peaks: Kilimanjaro in Africa, Aconcagua in South America, Denali in North America, and Elbrus in Europe. In May 2016, Maria and Robert set out to tackle the ultimate summit, Mount Everest. They had spent years preparing for this challenge, climbing other high peaks and training their bodies and minds. Maria indicated that despite the life-threatening risks of climbing Everest, she felt well prepared before leaving Nepal. There are certain aspects of the mountain which will be out of our control, such as avalanches and icefalls, which have plagued the previous 2 seasons on Everest. We can't worry about this aspect of the climb, and the odds are still very small of being caught up in it. A very experienced guide in Alaska told us that of all the things you can regret once you are on the mountain, you will never regret overtraining. It is also important to get experience spending long periods on a mountain, she said. In April 2016, the duo arrived in Nepal. They joined an expedition led by Arnold Koster. He was a Dutch mountaineer and an experienced guide who had led many successful treks to Everest and other mountains. They began their ascent from the south face of Everest, following the classic south route. The Southeast Ridge route first climbed by Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay in 1953. The team passed several camps along the way, where they rested, ate, and acclimated to the thin air. They knew the route was not easy to climb. Along the way, they faced many difficulties and dangers, including icefalls, crevasses, avalanches, and high winds. On Friday, May 20th, 2016, they successfully reached Camp 4 at 7,900 meters altitude. The real challenge begins here. The higher you get, the less time you can survive at this altitude due to the low oxygen content in the air. From 8,000 meters, the death zone begins. So Camp 4 was just below this zone. They knew they had to act quickly and effectively to reach the summit and return safely. When the weather conditions were right, they left Camp 4 with extra oxygen and set off for the summit. The team climbed in the dark, wearing their headlamps and following their Sherpa guides. The extra oxygen and other climbing gear they carried added weight and cost them more energy. Their dream was getting closer and closer. They had already passed many landmarks such as the South Summit, the Balcony, and the Hillary Step, but these final meters proved to be the most difficult. Suddenly, Maria began to feel unwell. She was tired and had little energy to continue. She decided to stop just hundreds of meters from the summit. Initially, Robert thought his wife was simply exhausted from the climb, but this turned out to be different in retrospect. At that point, Robert asked Maria for permission to continue. I asked, "Do you mind if I go on?" And she said, "Yes, you go on. I'll wait for you here." From that position, the summit didn't look that far. I didn't want to separate from her. I wanted her to keep going, he said of the decision to leave her and press on to the top. I also understood she was very exhausted. I just ran up and down and it didn't mean anything to me. Because we do everything together, and everything else we did together was much more special. When I made it to the summit of Everest, it wasn't special to me because I didn't have her there. After reaching the summit, Robert quickly climbed down and rejoined his wife, who by now had descended and was waiting for him at a lower altitude. Together with the team, they climbed further down, but it soon became clear that Maria's condition was rapidly deteriorating. According to Arnold Koster, the leader of the group, Maria was doing well until the balcony. After that, she became very sluggish and decided to turn around at 8 a.m. on the south summit. Normally, this would give her enough time to descend safely, but her condition deteriorated rapidly. Halfway between the south summit and balcony, she was hardly able to move and became very confused. They had to struggle all night to bring Maria down safely. They managed to reach the South Pole, but helicopter rescue was only possible from Camp 3. They had stabilized Maria that night with medication and oxygen and wanted to continue descending the next morning. But then things went wrong. Maria was able to walk herself, but 2 hours out of camp, she collapsed on the Geneva Spur. Robert tried to retrieve her, but it was too late. Maria had passed away in her husband's arms. He had to leave her body behind and descend further to survive. The next day, Robert was evacuated by helicopter with critical injuries from Camp 2 and taken to the hospital in Kathmandu. Heinz, Robert's father, said the following about this. They had to take him down by sled. He suffered high-altitude pulmonary edema. They'll chopper him down to Kathmandu and probably fly him either to Singapore or to Melbourne. Fortunately, he was discharged from the hospital that same evening. His parents, Heinz and Patricia, had traveled to Nepal to assist him. He did not want to leave the country yet until his wife's body was recovered from the mountain. The Sherpas worked together to recover Maria's body. Robert, meanwhile, waited in Kathmandu for his wife's body to be transferred. The recovery was tough and risky, but eventually they managed to get Maria's body off Everest and hand it over to her family. Maria passed away over the weekend, along with Eric Arnold, a Dutch climber who was part of the same expedition. He did reach the summit, and during the descent told his teammates that his body had run out of energy before he died in his sleep. When Maria's mother Maritha heard on Saturday, May 21, 2016, that Eric Arnold had passed away, she tried by all means to contact the expedition to locate them. By Sunday morning, however, the dreaded news had been revealed. "My beautiful girl," she wrote on social media. "I'm just too devastated to communicate." The family was angry with Arnold Koster Expeditions during this tragic event, since they were responsible for this expedition and because they had not contacted the family first. A number of family members have tried to call around and get information. "We've even read in newspapers and online different accounts of what actually had happened," Maria's mom said. Aletta Newman, Maria's sister, lashed out at the company on social media. "I have just read online that my sister Maria died on Everest," Newman wrote. "Why can't you contact the family before we have to find out this way? Please contact the family so we can get facts," said Aletta. Maria Stridham's fatal accident shocked and saddened her family, friends, and colleagues. Many of them expressed their support and condolences. The Monash University community wrote on social media to be deeply saddened by the tragic news. "We are liaising with authorities, and our heartfelt thoughts and support are extended to Maria's family, her friends, colleagues, and students. Maria will be greatly missed, but very fondly remembered by her many generations of students and colleagues at Monash Business School and the broader academic community throughout Australasia," Professor Gray said. Brigitte Muir, the first Australian woman to climb Everest, said, "When we go to the mountains, we are there because we want to be there. We don't have to be there, and that has to be honored as well," she said. "My deepest sympathies go to Maria's husband Rob and family and friends. I've been there. I know what it's like to lose someone you love to the mountains." Robert's father said they were devastated by this terrible news. "They were a young couple in love," he said. "It's just so bad. She was such a lovely girl. She was an achiever in every way." Maria's mother thanked her wonderful family and in-laws, who worked together as a team to make it possible to raise a fortune needed to bring Maria back. Her husband, Robert Gropel, reproached himself for leaving her behind when he reached the summit. He later said he wished he had stayed with her, and that reaching the summit meant nothing to him without her. Thanks for watching this story. Don't forget to like and subscribe and turn on your notification bell to stay updated on more similar videos. We would love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share your comments below. Until next time.